Well, now that the results are out, there are a bunch of level 2 candidates that were successful that are now moving on to level 3. Some of you, actually quite a few of you, were using the tapering strategy. At least we had quite a few on our site that had signed up for 1 or 2 books at level 3, or 1 or 2 sections, if you want to call it that, at level 3, and had already begun preparing for level 3 while they were waiting for the results to come out. And now that the results are out, they're 25-30% of the way through level 3. For some of you who have passed level 2, you're looking at level 3. You should know level 3 is offered 3 times this year. You'll have a seating in May. You'll have another one September 1st to September 8th, and then November 23rd to November 25th. So you do have 3 choices, and it is your last exam, so you want to make sure that you're only going to do it once. And if you don't have the 3 years work experience or the number of years work experience that you require, you can't get the charter till you have that done anyway. So if you don't have that, there is no rush to get it out of the way for May. For those of you who are going to write in May, the window is May 25th to June 1st. That's 115 days away, less 35 days for review. And I use 35 at level 3 because you're going to want some practice with the AM exam. It is different. You know, you have a question and you're staring at a blank screen. There's nothing to prompt you. It's not A, B, or C where you can read the choices, and sometimes even not knowing the answer, you can sometimes get rid of 1 or 2 of the answer choices just with logic. Not so with the AM exam. You sort of have to know how to approach it right away. And it is different. It does require a different or higher level of thinking and a higher level of learning, I should say, than level 2. And especially over level 1. So the next screen I'm going to talk about the different levels of learning. The pedagogical approach that I use consistently from level 1 does prepare you for level 3, all the way from level 1. Level 1 really focuses on lower levels of learning, the bottom 3 levels of the Bloom taxonomy. However, with the approach that I use, I tend to use all the levels of learning at each level. So if you've used me for level 1 and level 2, you'll find the style is compatible with what is required at level 3, but the practice you're going to need on the AM exam is important. That's why I say 35 days of review. That leaves 80 days. If you've already gotten a good start, you can divide that 80 days by the number of readings you have left. If not, if you're looking at, as of right now, trying to make a run for May, I get asked whether it's doable or not. Only you can answer if it's doable. All I can tell you is what is required to get done by May with 80 days to learn. 36 readings. There's actually 38, but 2 of them are case studies. I take them out. There's really 36 readings of learnings. That's about two days per reading. Some of these readings you're not going to really grab the nuance of what's going on. Currency management, for example, yield curve strategies, the 2 economics readings as well, performance evaluation. These require some thinking and some reflection on it to really grab the little tiny nuances that are there, but they're important. So 2 days means you're really just going to get a surfacey introduction of it. That's not going to be enough. That's why I write the words, that is tight. Unless you got nothing going on. Unless you got nothing going on from now to May and you can dedicate 3, 4, 5 hours every single day. And then you have 2 or 3 hours of reflection on it where you're thinking about what you read and it doesn't make sense. But you have time to go, okay, well, it doesn't make sense. Let me try to work that out. If you take September, 214 days, you have roughly about 5 days per reading. And if you take November, you've got roughly about 7 days per reading. 2 days per reading I think is too tight. 7 days per reading, probably too much. 5 days per reading is just about right, I think. So if you are going to do level 3 this year, I would look at making a run for the, well, it's called the August window, but the August window falls into September. Level 3 sits September 1st to September 8th. So I would look at doing that. So let's before I talk about what we offer for AM support, let's just flip over to the next screen and look at Bloom's taxonomy first, just so that we understand where we are in the levels of learning, and then we'll come back and see what we have for AM support. So this is Bloom's taxonomy of learning, and it goes through the stages of learning from the lowest level of learning all the way to the highest level, the lowest level being remembering or recall. And this can really be accomplished simply by just memorization. So a list of 6 things, for example, well, that lends itself to memorization. And it's the lowest form of testing, that if you're testing somebody's knowledge and you're testing them based on what they can memorize, you're not really testing their knowledge, you're just testing their ability to remember a lot of stuff, because you don't have to understand something to memorize it. I can give you a sentence from a medical textbook and ask you to memorize this, and I'll ask you tomorrow to repeat that sentence to me, and you may be able to repeat it to me, and if I say, well, what does it mean? You may not know what it means, but you can repeat it. So it's not really a level of learning. However, you do need that in place before you can move up to the level of understanding what something says. And just because you understand something does not mean you can apply it. Math is a good example of being able to understand something, looking at a process, saying, I understand that, and then looking at a question and then breaking down, saying, well, hang on now, where do I start? How do I begin this? So there's application, which builds upon understanding. It's hard to remember something and then go right to applying it without understanding what you're doing. You can read a question and you can memorize the process of the question. But if I give you another question that's just slightly different, then that process that you remembered will break down, because you'll say, well, hang on a second now, I'm not given just the variables that I need. Well, yeah, sometimes you might have to use 2 other variables to build the variable that you need before you can apply it, right? Hard to do that without understanding. This is really the domain of level 1, from remembering all the way up to application. It usually breaks down about 25% of the questions tend to be applied questions, which is calculate or solve this problem. The majority of it happens right in here, understanding 40 to 45, as much as 50%. Very few questions are remembering. They're rather easy questions, but they're on the level 1 exam. Level 2, not so much, and non-existent at level 3. You're not going to get a question that all it requires is you to memorize something. You're going to be applying, analyzing, or evaluating. Let's move over to level 2. Now, when I teach level 1, I should say this: when I do teach level 1, I don't teach it to those particular skills. I teach at a much higher level, so that on every formula we come across, it's not enough for me to say, here's the formula. I show you how that formula came to be, the logic behind the formula, so that you truly understand it. So that if you had to approach a task where you had to calculate a required rate of return, but there were 3 different ways to do it, which is more of an analyzing or evaluating problem, you have that skill set at level 1. So I don't just teach the lower 3 levels. The pedagogical approach I use is the same at all 3 levels. It's just what you're going to be tested on, the assessment that you're going to be given at the end to determine if you know the body of knowledge will depend on these levels of learning. And assessment at level 1 really focuses on just the bottom 3 levels of this taxonomy. When you move to level 2, you do breach into the analyzing category, and significantly less in terms of what you're expected to just remember. So I do say that you may be able to memorize your way through level 1. I doubt it, but you may. You're not going to memorize your way through level 2. So if you used very low levels of learning at level 1 for wherever you took level 1, whether you did it on your own or used someone else, if you relied on very low levels of learning and you got past level 1, you probably didn't score in the top 10% if you memorized your way through. But you could get lucky in the multiple choice and make the minimum passing score. Well, you may think that, well, that's reinforcement. That's going to work at level 2. And you're going to find very quickly that that's not going to work at level 2. You have to elevate the levels of learning that you're doing and expect to be assessed at a higher level of learning. So at level 2, it breaches into analyzing. So the problems that you're given are not really going to be, take the variables, plug it into a formula, off you go. You may have to weigh some pros and cons or advantages and disadvantages of certain things and say, well, because of this, I know it's not that, and because of this over here, it's not this, so I know it must be something else. Heavy on applying and analyzing and understanding, not a lot on remembering at level 2. That does not mean that you're not going to have to remember some things. You are, but you're not going to be tested on your ability to remember it. When you get to level 3, you really get right to the top level. Not the top level here, creating. That's a different thing altogether, but you do get to the limits of evaluation. So analysis, evaluation, and application. So level 3 will pretty much start at application. Very little is going to rely on understanding or remembering. You're just expected to remember what you need to remember in terms of formulas and to understand what's going on. And your assessment will begin pretty much at the level of application. Some of the easiest questions on the AM exam are calculate. Because it does not require higher levels of learning like analyzing and evaluating. So the calculate questions, they're easy to prepare for. You just have to do enough problems, especially with math. That's really what it works down to is repetition with math. But to analyze and evaluate, you really have to have a deep understanding of what's going on. And then you're given scenarios where you're given 3 possible choices that you can take, and you must determine which is the appropriate choice given the context, and not only just determine it, but you must then justify why that is the appropriate choice, and that justification includes stating why the other ones are not. So you do have some analysis to do, and then if you're choosing the appropriate strategy for something, there's an evaluation that comes into play as well. So the AM exam is heavy at the higher levels of learning. So you do have to progress beyond just understanding what's going on and being able to apply formulas. You then have to be able to compare alternatives, assess those alternatives based on a scenario and choose one and demonstrate why you've chosen that one. Being that that's the case, let's see what kind of support that we offer for the AM exam. So we have 2 AM exam seminars. One's a support seminar, one is a strategy seminar. They're each half an hour long, but full of good information on how to approach questions in the AM session. It's not a review of any knowledge. It's just looking at the type of question that we're answering, the structure of the question, and the structure of the answer, and how you would answer based on specific keywords. We have 4 AM mock exams. These are all online. The real exam will be 135 points. We've put our AM exams at 145 points, 10 points longer than what you would expect. You should always work out at a level that's a little bit higher than where you'll compete, and a little bit longer than where you'll compete. If you ever go into a gym where a boxer is training for a fight, his sparring partners will always be 10 or 20 pounds heavier than he is. Because when he gets into the ring, he'll be in the ring with someone his own weight. That'll be much easier to handle. So he'll always, especially if he's doing rope work, he'll get somebody 10, 20 pounds heavier than him to lean on him on the ropes to see if he can get out of there. Well, if you can get out of there with a 20 pound disadvantage, you get into the ring with somebody with equal weight, you should be able to. Well, I think you should do the same thing with your mind when you're training for the competition. You should train with weight and speed that's a little bit more than what you'll actually face in the true competition. So 145 points all online. We are going to mock the real exam that you're going to write. In other words, it's the same experience. So you have to type your answers into a box. I'll show you what a question looks like, so you'll see what our mock exams look like online. We have a video walkthrough of each answer. So after you finish the exam, you can then go through and you can watch the video explanation of the answer along with what you should be typing into the box, what you should not be typing in, how much and how little, etc. We have an enhanced grading key for every question so that you can grade yourself, that you can look at what you've written and know where, if a question is worth 4 or 5 points, it breaks down as to where those 4 or 5 points would go. This is new for this year as well. Every year we try to add more and more value. Hopefully without having to raise our prices, but we do try to add more and more value. We're going to have 64 hours of live drop-in grading sessions. Now, in previous years, you could opt for a one-on-one grading session, and we do still have limited amounts of that available. But we find that with the enhanced grading, with the video walkthroughs, and I think with the live drop-in grading sessions, it becomes less and less necessary to have to pay for a one-on-one grading session. And there'll be 16 hours of drop-in grading available at multiple hours for each exam over a 5-week period. So if you've done exam 1 and you're grading it yourself, but you do have some questions, you can go to one of these live sessions. There'll be a number of people in the live session with you, and you could just ask a question, and the grader will be on the other side, doing a walkthrough of the exam, question by question, of how to grade yourself. And the grader is a charter holder who has sat through the same exam that you're going to sit through, who knows exactly what you're going to be facing. 64 hours of that's included in with the level 3 package that we have. You just have access to that automatically. We also have 2 past CFAI exams. We're leaving them at the 180 points that they are because they're not ours, and there's a limit to how much editing that we can do based on the agreement that we have of what we can use. So we can bring them up to standard for 2021 content, but once we start chopping and cutting, well then, maybe we're going a little too far. So we're just going to leave them as they are. But these are really for practice. So, there's nothing wrong with doing a 3-hour practice exam in preparing for a 2-hour and 15-minute exam. Nothing wrong with that. Same here, the 145 points rather than 135 points forces you into time management to manage your time for 145 points. So when you get into the real exam and you only have 135, you've worked out 4 times at 145 points. 135, you should be able to manage your time quite well in that. Let's have a look at what the interface looks like and what I mean by your typed response here. All right, so here we are. I've taken a question at random, and in this part of the screen, you'll notice that the question scrolls separately from the answers, which are on the other side. Here's question 5A. 5B, you just have to click on 5B. 5A will close and 5B will open, so that's all you have on the screen. And then when you're ready for 5C, you click on 5C and only that will open. So if we're on 5A, one of the things we have to choose, if we look at the question here, determine if Dana will be engaging in liability-driven investing, form of immunization, or asset liability management form. And you have LDI and ALM here. You just click on one and it's circled for you. The nice thing about doing it online with this is we can partially grade your questions based on what you're selecting. Now, there was some talk about there being multiple choice questions in the AM session. That's not entirely correct. So what I've done here with LDI and ALM is I've made it look like the previous exams where you just circle the one that you want. On the computer-based exam, there'll be a little radio button in front of each one, and you'll just click the one you want. So that's what it makes it sound like it's multiple choice mixed in with structured response. But the choice you're making is just, rather than circling something, you're just clicking the box in which you're selecting the answer, and then you type in your response in this box. And if you need more room, you can just drag the box a little bit lower. We have disabled autocorrect in the exam so that you don't have to worry about autocorrect in your browser, and you don't have to worry about it changing words on you, because sometimes you might use a shortcut word and your browser decides, no, I think you meant this word, and then change the word, and it would just waste time for you having to go back and fix what autocorrect did. So we disabled autocorrect. You'll notice that I have Grammarly here, and it's not going to do anything about this. because in the real exam there will be no autocorrect. There will be nothing that fixes a word that you spelt wrong. So we may as well do that here. There is no marks. There are no marks at all, lost marks for grammar and spelling. That's not graded at all. So if you spell a word wrong, don't worry about it. What we don't want is autocorrect to change a word on us to something completely different in what we didn't mean. So that's disabled for you. And you can go through each question the same way. Question 6A, you notice it only requires a response. 6B, you have a choice between Bob and Doug, domestic versus foreign equity for each one. You just click on it and you provide a calculation. Whenever you have a calculation, there's been some questions about this, is how do we type in the formula? There are no marks for the formula. There'll be a formula editor. You can type it in, but why? There's no marks. Let's say the answer to this calculation was 75. There you go. There's full marks, 75. You don't have to show your work with the computer-based testing. You don't have to show your work. You don't have to show your calculations. If your answer is 75 and you're pretty sure that's the answer, and the question was worth 5 marks, there's 5 marks right there, 75. You just type in 75. But if the answer was 57, and you just mixed it up and typed in 75 instead, or you made a mistake in entering something into the calculator, but you were on the right track, well, now you get no part marks. So, it always helps to enter in the entire formula. This way here, if only one variable was wrong, you can still get part marks. And that's all you have to do, is just type it in as you would type it in to anything that doesn't have a formula editor for it. The grader is a professional. The grader is an expert in this particular question, will know exactly what you're doing. But I thought I'd put that out there now, that if you do have a calculate question for computer-based testing and the answer is 75 and you're sure of that, just type in 75. You will get full marks. You do not have to show your work. But if you're wrong, then you don't get part marks. So that's it. You have across the top 1 all the way through 10. Once you've answered every question, you click on the orange button up here that says mark the exam. It will mark whatever it can mark on its own. So for example, domestic equity, if that was the right choice, you'll be given 1 mark already. You'll only have to determine whether what you've typed into the box is correct based on the enhanced grading key that we have for each answer. And if the enhanced grading key isn't enough, hit play and I will narrate the answer and the possible answers that you could put and the grade that you would get for that. And we have 4 of those AM exams and 2 past CFAI exams, so 6 in total. All right, so all of that, all of this AM support, everything in here, this comes with the level 3 package that we sell. We sell for 415 Canadian, given a 28% exchange rate. I got a calculator here. I'll do it quick. I should have had it done before. It's about $325 US compared to prices that I've seen out there of $1,000, $1,300 US. All the way to $2,000, and there's always a question. Well, if you're 415 Canadian, there must be something missing. No, it's just we follow a different pricing model. There is a value model and there is a cost model, and I do have a video out about this. That if you search my channel for value versus cost, I think you'll find it. You can price something based on the value that the user will extract. So if I were going to price it based on value, I'd be right up there with everyone else, $1,500 to $2,000. I'll put my content up against anybody's content any day. And then there's the cost model, which says, well, what is it going to cost us to deliver this? How much does it cost us to get this done? And that's how we price ours, from the bottom up, not from the top down. So we don't price it based on the value you extract. We price it based on what it cost us to get it to you. We know how much it costs to deliver this. So when we see prices of $1,000 to $1,300 to $2,000, we know it's the provider that is extracting value out of you rather than delivering value to you. We believe in delivering overwhelming value. And if you want to just try it, you don't have to buy the whole level 3. You can pick book 3 or book 4. Well, any of the books really. I say book 3 or 4 because they're the more cognitively challenging ones. Don't take something super easy and see how I do. Take something super hard and see how I do. $69.25 Canadian gets you all the readings in that section, all the review videos for that section. I do all the walkthroughs of the end of chapter questions. All those blue box examples in the reading, about half of them are within the video itself. I do walkthroughs of about half of them. The other half, I think it's important that you do on your own, but the more challenging ones, we stick right into the video itself. And then you have the question bank for that particular section as well. Try it out before you go spending $1,300 or $2,000. $69.25 Canadian, I think, is around $52 US. Spend $52. Give it a shot. What do you got to lose for $52, right? Give it a shot and see what it's about. Now, if this isn't enough, we do have more. We have weekend workshops. These are 240 Canadian each. These are far more intensive, where we take a number of AM questions in a whole bunch of different formats, and we don't follow the 135 or 145 point system here. These are 180, 190 point exams, and they're not really exams. They're meant to be a whole bunch of drills on questions with different keywords, so you get used to answering different keywords. And then we do probably a live session somewhere between 5 and 7 hours long, where we go through every single question. We look at the keyword, and if we see this keyword, here's the structure of the answer. Here's what we have to get down. Not the exact words, but here's what we're looking for. We see this, we know it's 1 or 2 bullet points for this. If we see something like this, we know that we're answering the question this way. So it really gives you the structure of what's going on. But I would say try one of the mock exams first with the video walkthrough and the live drop-in grading session. And if you feel you need more, we do have more. And if you feel that that's enough, then great. So there we go. Your takeaway here that I want you to think about is the time frame, right? If you're going to sit for May, it's tight, especially if you haven't really begun. And really, this is your last exam. You know you're going to get it done in 2021. It's May, August, or November. What's the rush, right? You don't want to have to do it in May and then say, well, I can sit again in November if I fail. I don't like that kind of thinking that my November is my backup in case I fail. If you're thinking in case you fail, why not just take September and pass? Give yourself another 90 days and pass. None of this, well, I'll take it in May, and if I fail, I'll make a run for November. Take it in September and pass. Simple as that. That's it.